Hello, scholars, and welcome to episode 4 of Lore Academy. In this episode, we'll be covering one of the oldest species in the lore, the Hive. Keep in mind that much of what we know about the Hive could be a lie due to the untrustworthy nature of our sources. That being said, we will start with the origins of the Hive. Several 100,000 years ago, the Hive existed on the planet of Fundament. The planet of Fundament was brutal, but the short lives of the Hive allowed them to adapt and evolve quickly enough to survive. One group of Hive, the Osmium Court, was ruled by a king so old that he began to descend into madness. It seemed like one of his 3 daughters, Sathona, Zyro, and Arash, would take the throne. But Teox betrayed the king by working with another group, the Helium Drinkers, to murder the king and his children in order to take control for herself. This plan nearly worked, except the 3 daughters escaped before being killed. The 3 traveled for years. Eventually, they found massive worm gods that worshipped the darkness. A deal was made with these gods. The sisters would be implanted with their children, small worms, and they would be granted eternal life. But there was a catch. The worms had a great hunger, and would consume the sisters from the inside if they were not fed. These worms could only be sustained with bloodshed, and by the sisters following their nature. Sathona, now Savathun, the Scheme Mother, could not abandon her cunning. Aurash, now King Aurix, could not abandon his desire to discover. And Zyro, now Zivu Arath, the warmonger, could never abandon war. They went back to retake their court, and gave their people worms of their own. The Hive made war upon the galaxy, especially to those species that worshipped the light. They used the philosophy of the darkness to pave their path. This philosophy, called the sword logic, states that life should battle, so that only the strongest remains at the end of the universe. By following this logic, the siblings made their own sword realms. Sword realms are places that powerful Hive can return to after a death in order to recover and go back into the material plane. The only way for one of these Hive to truly die is for them to be killed in their own sword world. They continued their campaign and soon realized that they had been deceived. The hunger of their worms grew the more they fed them, and now they could no longer keep up. Aurix realized this was because they were given the worms, but the way of the sword is to take. So, he went to the worm his god, and slew him, and became Oryx, the Taken King. With his newfound power and knowledge, he went back to his sisters, and described to them the solution to their problem. I am the Taken King, and here is my law. You thrall, each of you will claw and scream, and kill what you can. Take enough killing to feed your worm, and a little more to grow. Tithe the rest to the acolyte who commands you. You acolytes, lead your thrall in battle. Take enough killing to feed your worm, and a little more to grow. Then take the tithe of the thrall you lead. Then tithe the remainder to the knight or wizard who commands you. Thus you pay tribute. You knights and wizards, lead your followers in battle. Take enough devastation to feed your worm, and a little more to grow, and take the tithe of your followers. Then take another portion, as much as you dare, and use it for your own purposes. But if it is too much, your peers will kill you and take it. Then, tithe the remainder to the Ascendant you serve. An Ascendant will be those among the Hive who gather enough tribute to enter the Sword Realm. They will pay a tithe to those above them. And thus the tribute will flow up the chain so that Savathun and Zivorath and myself will be fed by a great river of tribute, and we will use that excess to feed our gods and to study the deep. Thus, all the worms will be fed, so long as we continue our crusade. With their worms sated for the foreseeable future, they went on with their wars. The siblings would eventually split up on their own paths, which brings us to the present day. The Hive have come to Sol for the very same reason they came to all the systems before, to satisfy the sword logic and devour light. Go now and push these devils out of our system. And that's the basics of the Hive for you. I'll see you next time, scholars. Keep studying.